Hello, my darlings. Mother Raven here with another tale for you. This is a no sleep from Lavidius, titled The Blind Can See Me. I never knew my father, but that never bothered me. Joe was a fantastic stepdad, and growing up, you could have almost never guessed that he wasn't my birth father from the way he showered me with affection. The only discernible giveaway was my somewhat darker complexion. My childhood was fairly unremarkable. We lived in a small house just outside of town, and the locals liked and respected my family. It was a funny little hamlet. Everyone knew everyone else so well that when a baby was born, the news would spread like wildfire, and before you knew it, the newborn would be showered with gifts. It was my teenage years, perhaps when I was 15 or so, that it first happened. I was heading into town to visit the local supermarket. It was on a Saturday morning, so the place was getting fairly busy with people heading out to go shopping, eating lunch, and so on. I was minding my own business and listening to some music when I noticed a man staring at me. What made it even more remarkable was that he was holding a white stick, the kind you see being unceremoniously tapped on the ground ahead of a blind man to prevent him from bumping into objects. The guy was probably in his early 50s, thinning hair turning white at the temples, crowned an altogether overly sweaty head for just such a mild morning. His mouth was agape as his eyes were just locked on my own. Now, I was educated enough to know that blind doesn't always mean completely blind. There are a great number of registered blind people who still retain some form of rudimentary vision. Not this one, apparently. "I can see you." It was more a case of mouth reading than hearing him. I pulled out my headphones and walked over to him. "What did you say?" "I can see you." At this point, I really didn't know what to tell him. He seemed slightly too young to be suffering with dementia, and yet I couldn't really come up with any other explanation for his maddening expression and semi-accusatory speech. I wished him a good day and carried on with my walk up the shops. With all the best will in the world, I only had so much time to devote to a clearly disturbed person. It would take almost 10 years more for me to understand the astonishing point I had completely missed on that day. My granddad, Pete, or step-granddad, Joe's father, had died after a brief battle with esophageal cancer. While I always classed myself as more of an agnostic, Pete was an old-school fire and brimstone Catholic. So there I was at St. Michael's Church on a Sunday morning, watching a stranger in a colorful robe spray holy water around while herds of old people I don't know were all singing the most earth-enduring dull hymns for hours on end. You know, Catholics. Anyway, I sat there in the front row, being a direct relative when I looked over to the side. There was a small group of old fellows sat out of the way of things, all dressed in red robes. I presume they are old church officials or similar, and I noticed the one on the end sat in the darkest shade of crimson, his wizened hands resting tentatively on his frail legs. His face seemed to be made of skin so thin you could see every vein that carried blood around his fragile physique. His eyes, though, contained cataracts so thick that they were opaque white. He clearly had been without sight for some time, and yet he was staring straight at me. I tore my eyes away and looked back at the proceedings at the front, just in time for yet another hymn to begin. The congregation shuffled to their feet, and old Uncle David leaned forward from the pew behind me, poking me on the shoulder and thrusting his hymn book under my nose as an encouragement to sing. Eventually, as with all things, the ceremony came to an end. I noticed my friend in the red robe didn't rise to his feet when everyone else did. He stayed sat while the whole congregation shambled their way out of the doors at the rear of the church. And I sat too, Once the last person had left, it was just the two of us, sat in the church. I made my way hesitantly towards him. As I got closer, he picked some books up off the seat next to him and gestured for me to sit. I noticed the books as he put them to one side. Braille Bibles. I can see you. He finally spoke after some considerable time. But you already knew that, didn't you? It would be hard for me to put a firm grip on my emotional response to his question. I was naturally shocked to hear this from a blind man. Simultaneously, my memories from 10 years prior came flooding back. How can you see me? I don't know why I thought he would know, but I was clueless and intrigued enough to give it a go. He smiled. You know why. Deep down, you know why. What do you see? I mean, I know you say you see me, but how? I pointlessly gestured at his milky eyes. I see naught but black, as I have seen since I was a young man, and yet there you are in the middle of it all, a shining beacon in a sea of darkness. I was starting to panic now. At what, I don't know, but I can say that despite the cool breeze pouring in through the all too old and thin stained glass windows, I was sweating profusely. I stumbled around for my next question. Why? His smile grew. I already told you. You know why. None can be blind in your presence. He must have sensed my lack of comprehension as he went on. You are a restorer, are you not? You take that which is old, riddled and broken, and make it whole again. A slight flash of fear and anger came across me. I quickly regained my composure, but my frustration grew as the more answers I received, the less I understood. How do you know my job? We've never even met. True, we've never met, and yet we have known each other. You restore the broken, and that's why you are here now. It's why I can see you, and it is why soon everyone will see you. Much more that you can do that you don't yet know of. You will be a great blessing. My frustration grew to a boiling point. I turned to him and took his head in my hands. Holding his cheeks, I screamed, You do not know me! As I bellowed, so too did he, this time all his calmness removed. He screamed in pure terror. The whiteness vanished from his eyes, and within the same instant, all the windows of the church blew inwards. Colored fragments of glass littered the interior of St. Michael's. And as the echoes of our screams receded, he raised his now clear eyes to mine. I do not know you. I am cursed. With that, his eyes lost their life. His breathing stopped almost instantaneously. I felt the rigidity go out of his spine. I laid him back in his chair and stood up in shock. I could not believe a man had just died seemingly out of nowhere. Panicking, I looked around to see if anyone had seen me. Amidst all the chaos of broken glass and splinters, I remained alone inside the church. I quickly made my way down the central aisle to the main door. Just as I placed my hand upon it, I heard a great, booming voice directly behind me. Where are you going? You are already home. So quoth this raven. Thank you, my darlings. If you liked it, please like and subscribe or follow on VidMe. And I will see you again next time, my darlings, under the trees.